Hello and welcome to Go Ballistic, the Scottish Sun's football show. I'm David Friel, and in this episode I'm going to be joined by Gareth Law, who is stateside with Celtic on their pre-season tour. I'm also going to go to the north of Scotland to speak to Robert Thomson on all matters domestic football and European football, with the qualifiers starting this week. I'm joined by Gareth immediately from North Carolina. Gareth, how are you? How are things over on the Celtic trip?
Yeah, good. Thanks, David. I'm just about over the jet lag now. I'm just about into American time. So, yeah, all good.
You spoke to Brendan Rodgers last night. You spoke to Kasper Schmeichel last night. How is Celtic's new number one goalkeeper settling into life at the club?
Very comfortably by the looks. Yesterday was his first training session since joining. He only got in a few hours before the Saturday night win, or the Saturday night here win over DC United. So since then, I think he's been mingling with the fans, just kind of getting to know his teammates. But yesterday down at the Wake Med Soccer Complex, about 20 minutes, half an hour away from where tonight's game will be played, he was put up in front of the media for the first time. We've all seen him speak numerous times on TV, and very comfortable in his surroundings. Seemed to be. We've talked about him coming in as a replacement for Joe Hart, the type of leader Joe Hart was. You listened to him last night. He seemed a guy who is very comfortable in his own skin. He then went out and took part in an open training session for Celtic fans in the area here. Pulled off an unbelievable save early on, which had the fans cheering. Looked like he'd been playing for Celtic for years, the way he seemed to be joining in with things out there. So, yeah, I don't think there'll be any kind of issues with him kind of integrating into the squad. I think he's well on the way with that already.
Celtic are obviously playing Manchester City on Tuesday night into Wednesday. Kasper Schmeichel hasn't played since the Euros. Had a few training sessions. Celtic have also got another game against Chelsea at the weekend. You do expect him to get some game time before the end of the tour, Gareth?
I'd be surprised if he didn't play. I'm not saying he's going to play any 90 minutes. The way Brendan Rodgers seems to have operated in this pre-season is giving most guys who haven't had a lot of action 45 minutes to start with. Maybe likes of Callum McGregor, for example. He came on for the second half against DC United. He seems to be easing people in. So I would probably expect Schmeichel to appear at some stage over the next two games. I wouldn't imagine to see him out there for any 90 minutes or anything like that.
There's a lot of focus in Kasper Schmeichel. There is so much focus on Matt O'Reilly. He captained Celtic against DC United. He scored twice against DC United, but the transfer interest is just intensifying. Gareth, you've been all over this story. Atalanta keep very, very keen on him. They keep coming back with bids. Brendan Rodgers quizzed on it last night. Admitted Celtic are under no pressure to sell, and also spoken the way Matt O'Reilly is handling it. It has been quite impressive, Gareth, the way he doesn't seem to have let it fluster him at all.
Yeah, we've all seen players over the years who get their heads turned by the big money on offer. They very kind of quickly decide they want to leave the club they're at, and the grass will be greener. If I'm honest, I don't expect Matt O'Reilly to be here come September. But the way he's dealing with it, you wouldn't know that he's got all this interest in him. As you say, he captained the side on Saturday nights, and Brendan Rodgers wouldn't give the captaincy to a player who's been causing issues behind the scenes, and it wasn't done as a statement to sort of try and keep Matt O'Reilly at the club. I think it was just there's a lot of mutual respect there between the two of them. I think, and the way O'Reilly feels and his playing and his form that he's carried on from last season, I think that showed on Saturday night. He'd also scored against Queen's Park before coming out here. But it was a real kind of captain's display in that first 45 minutes. The DC United goalkeeper had put up the shackles against some of the other Celtic players, but when they had shots at goal. But O'Reilly was, well, as everybody will have seen, was cool and composed in front of goal. It wasn't just the goals that made his performance so impressive. He was his usual kind of self that we kind of saw last season. So as I say, I think there'll be. I mean, the Atalanta bids won't be the last of it. Celtic have thrown out this latest bid, but we all know what it's like at this stage of the season, and the first club that comes in for a player isn't necessarily the one that the player goes to either. So, yeah, Celtic are out here for another, what are we now, another 6 days, 5 days, and wouldn't be surprised to see more interest in him between now and when we come back.
But we've all been aware of the English interest in Matarelli. That's Atletico Madrid, a January bid, Atalanta, several bids here. Can you see him playing abroad potentially? Gareth, he obviously plays for Denmark. He's a guy who doesn't seem, I don't think he'd be scared to broaden his horizons at all.
No, you've spoken to him, I've spoken to him, in press conferences, and he's clearly a guy with sort of old head on young shoulders, an intelligent guy, quite a deep thinker as well. You could see him going abroad, I think. I mean, he's the type of guy. I was actually out in Denmark with the Scotland under-21s when he was still an under-21 player with Denmark, and I remember him sitting down with a Danish journalist, and the Danish journalist gave him the option to do the interview in English, because when he'd previously been out to Denmark, he'd had to do it in English, and Matt O'Reilly went, no, I want to do it in Danish, and he did it in fluent Danish. His mother is obviously is Danish. His grandmother's Danish. He's obviously got close to his family, so he was used to that language being around him, but he was by no means fluent in it. So, I think stuff like, going into a new country, immersing yourself in a new culture, learning a new language, I don't think that would faze him at all.
You speak about Matarelli potentially leaving Celtic, but Brendan Rodgers is far from finished in the transfer market. He admitted the other day to yourself over in America that he wants another 2 strikers, one of which we all know he would like to be Adam Idah. Do you see that deal edging closer at all, Gareth?
There's a little bit of a impasse, might be too strong a word right now, but I mean, they've obviously had that one offer thrown out. The Norwich manager's been talking Adam Idah up as well, and has been playing him in pre-season. As I said on Go Ballistic last week, you wonder if there's a little bit of psychology in that, in terms of making it sound like they want him more than they do, and hope that they can sort of eke a few more millions out of Celtic. That one seems to have gone quiet. As you know, Brendan Rodgers, he hasn't really opened up on that side of things since we've been out here. The fact he's mentioned he wants 2 strikers, I think fed into that is the fact that he earmarked Rocco Vata for a sort of understudy role and a sort of developmental role coming into this season, and he's obviously left. So whilst he's saying he wants 2 more strikers in, I do think maybe the second striker after Idah, or whoever that first striker is, we might see somebody who's, I don't know, been at a Premier League club in England, for example, not had first team opportunities, and is, maybe not quite good enough to make it down there, and is coming up here to develop and learn, in the sense that probably Brendan Rodgers would have liked to have done with Rocco Vata.
And Gareth, as we say, Celtic play Manchester City tonight in a friendly, a nice easy warm-up for Brendan Rodgers' side against English champions.
Yeah, I think this will be Celtic's 4th game now of their pre-season, but it'll be Manchester City's 1st. So I don't think we can expect a sort of top-notch Man City necessarily, guys on the game. Also, you look at the squad, and all the players who have been at the Euros aren't here. So it is a watered-down Manchester City squad, but as we all know, there's quality in there. Erling Haaland's there. He turned 24 this week, still just 24. So he's out here. Jack Grealish will still be disappointed not to go to the Euros. I think he'll probably have a point to prove. So I think, it'll be a massive test tonight. I also think the conditions, temperatures are going to be touching 40 tonight, I think, by all accounts. The area has been bombarded with thunder showers over the last 24 hours. Celtic's training session was delayed yesterday because of the showers. I got caught in it coming back to the hotel, got absolutely soaked, and so it's that kind of weather here at the minute. So I think the conditions could play a part, and I also think that might see more substitutions, more changes made potentially during the game, because they'll have to kind of manage the players through the conditions.
From North America, we're going to the north of Scotland. I am joined by Robert Thomson. Robert, how are you? How's things?
Not bad, David. Yourself?
Yeah, all good, all good. I'll start with some breaking news this morning. Adam Webb and Euston Johnson, owner, has announced that the main stand at McDermott Park is going to be called after Jeff Brown. Can I just get your reaction to the news?
Well, it's no huge surprise. I mean, Adam Webb's been a huge charm offensive since he took over, and he's certainly making all the right noises, and this is another positive step. I mean, Jeff Brown's been the owner there for 38 years, which I can't imagine there's too many people in the history of Scottish football have served that amount of time. You know, took them from Muirton Park to McDermott Park, from the bottom of the old second division up to the Premier League, playing in Europe, winning cups. So, I mean, it's very fitting for his legacy, and hopefully they'll get a good turnout on a week on Monday for the Aberdeen game to celebrate Jeff's time at the club.
Adam Webb's just getting his feet under the table. Robert, we've got a few American owners in Scotland now. What kind of style do you think he's going to go for? What kind of approach in terms of St Johnstone over the next few years?
I think he'll be hands-off in terms of running the day-to-day. He's going to bring in a chief executive. With Stan Harris is staying on at the moment, but that's just to have a transition. I think he'll bring in a chief executive. Whether he brings in a football person or a business person is a big question. Whether he brings in someone from America or gets someone from here is another thing that will be quite interesting to see what his strategy on that is. And I think, I mean, he's full of ideas. You know, he's come up with the documentary that they're going to be making. You know, he's going to be I think he'll be quite public as well. I think he'll be quite accessible. I mean, the fact that he's bought a house in Perth already and his investors will be coming over and they'll be using that as their base is a positive sign. I can't see him getting involved too much with the football side and the day-to-day. You know, I don't imagine he'll be picking players and, you know, telling Craig Levein who to sign. But I think the signs so far are positive that he'll be hands-on enough, but he'll also let the football department run it the way they want to as well.
It's probably natural for some fans to be concerned, given Jeff was there for so long, it was in the Brown family for so long, but what's been the general reaction in terms of St Johnstone fans to the new owner?
I think the fact that Jeff's given him such a glowing reference, you know, if not many people who know St Johnstone or have been about the club actually thought Jeff would find somebody good enough to take on his baby. The fact that he has, and he's so invested in this guy, you know, they've been speaking for over a year, he spent a lot of time sussing him out, and you know, the fact that Jeff's given him his approval and the fact Jeff's staying on in a sort of advisory capacity, I think that's made people sort of realise that this guy could be the right man for the long term.
If we could just move up the road to Aberdeen, we are speaking on Tuesday afternoon. You're going to Aberdeen game tonight. What's been your first impressions of Jimmy Tellin so far?
He's quite an engaging character when you sit down and speak to him. I mean, he's very, very straight, very focused on what he wants to do. I mean, I don't think he's going to be a manager who gets involved in the madhouse of Scottish football and will be ranting and raving about referees and things like that. I think he's quite standoffish in that front. I mean, I don't think he's going to be a guy who's going to come out and criticise the opposition, although you never know. I mean, the madhouse of Scottish football might get a grip of him and he succumbs to it. But he seems very focused on his style of play and fostering the team spirit. That's been the big thing that's come through in the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks. He's very big on the team spirit, making his players happy. And, you know, you've seen even like Shaden Morris getting a second chance and he talked him up yesterday. So it'll be fascinating to see how he deals with him. Other players have been frozen out as well. So it's certainly interesting times. I mean, tonight's game will be very interesting to see how much of his style he's managed to impart on the players so far. Because, you know, everything you were reading and everything you're hearing out of Sweden is a very distinct, high pressing, high sort of pace style. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, he's only had 4 or 5 weeks with the players, but Airdrie are the best team that they've played so far. So it'll be interesting tonight to see where they actually stand.
It was interesting last week. Joe Lewis was asked what Aberdeen should be targeting this season, and he seemed to say that a top 5 finish would be success. What do you think ranks as success for Aberdeen this season?
I mean, a top 5 finish 5 or 6 years ago would have been failure for Aberdeen. I mean, I think every Aberdeen manager now has to go into the season thinking 3rd place. I mean, given where they were last year, 5th place probably would be incremental success. But with the wage bill at Aberdeen, the profile of the club, the demands, the squad they've got, albeit the squad's still maybe slightly thin on numbers, you've got to think top 4 minimum would be what's required.
Obviously, there's a lot of interest in Bojan Miovski. He is expected to leave this summer. What's the state of play with his situation? Do you expect him to leave Aberdeen soon?
It's Jimmy Thellin's first game at Pittodrie tonight. I've got a sneaky feeling it might be Bojan Miovski's last game. Just not that he said very much, because I don't think he's going to be a man that speaks much about transfers either, but just looking at Jimmy Fallon's body language the last 2 press conferences when we've been asking him about him, does suggest that although Bojan Miovski is available for selection, he never played on Saturday there. He's in the squad tonight. Just get the feeling that Jimmy Fallon he's planning for life without Miovski.
Aberdeen aren't in Europe this season, but Kilmarnock and St Mirren both start their European campaigns the next 48 hours. St Mirren off to Iceland to play Valor. Kilmarnock a really, really tough tie against Belgian opposition Cercle Bruges. How do you see both those teams doing, Robert?
I think the Valor game is possibly more difficult than it looks on paper. And Icelandic football has been on the up. And I mean, 20 years ago, Scottish teams getting drawn against these clubs, you would have thought it was a penalty kick. Now, not so sure. I mean, they've got a lot of internationals in their team. They've just signed Sigurdsson, who was at Everton, Swansea, Spurs. So there's quite a bit of quality there. And as we've seen for the Icelandic national team over the last few years, they're very capable. So I think Valor will be a much tougher proposition away from home than it would have been maybe 20 years ago. But the good thing for St Mirren is that they're at home in the second leg. And given the fitness disparity, the fact that Valor are 14 games into their season, they might kick on from this week's game. And having the second leg at home might be just enough to see them through.
And in terms of Kilmarnock, the plastic pitch is always a help to them, but Dermot McInnes also got pretty much the bulk of the squad from last season as well, albeit they're playing against a very good team, Cercle Bruges.
Yeah, they look like a quality side. The pitch at Rugby Park is always the one thing that thinks you can maybe could be a bit of a leveller there. But I mean, Cercle Bruges don't really have a huge European history, and that might be something that Kilmarnock can maybe play on. It's not as if they're a team used to playing in Europe season after season. I think this is only the 4th time they've been in Europe in their history. But on paper, it looks like they've got a lot of quality players. They've got this tie-in with Monaco, which you would think that they've got good players through that. So it looks tough for Kilmarnock. I mean, I think if Kilmarnock can stay in it for the second leg, then Derek McInnes will be quite happy with that. The one thing as well in their favour for Kelly is Derek's got a good record in Europe in some of these games. Groningen with Aberdeen, Rijeka with Aberdeen. So he does know how to pull off these shocks very early in the season.
And also Rangers are a fortnight, they'll start their Champions League qualifying campaign against either Dinamo Kiev or FK Partizan from Serbia. Tough draw on paper, Robert.
It does. Dynamo Kiev and Rangers maybe not be a bit closely matched. The one strange thing about it is neither team will play in their home stadium. So what dynamic does that bring to the tie if it is Dynamo Kiev? Rangers, Ibrox has been a huge weapon for them over the years. How will they react to playing at Hampden? Dynamo Kiev, for obvious reasons, playing Poland for the European games. They've kind of flitted with the Champions League. They've been in the Europa League. They look a very similar standard to Rangers, you have to say. And obviously they've got Yarmolenko, who everybody in Scotland knows well from playing against us and scoring against us for Ukraine. I think he's a big player for them, and I do think looking at the squads on paper, you think they'd be quite evenly matched.
Robert, thanks for your time.
Cheers.
And thanks for watching. Please remember to subscribe to the Scottish Sunsport YouTube channel and keep watching Go Ballistic, the Scottish Suns football show, for all the latest news and stories from the mad world of Scottish football. We'll be back soon. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.